Check me out. Look, I know perfect timing feels like I'm too late. And I know I'm still great in spite of my mistakes. You know it's authentic every rhyme I say.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Perfect Timing Multisport. I'm really excited. I'm just not only excited to be back, but I'm really excited to be back and reintroducing you all to a great friend of ours in the platform, the podcast, the resource, Freddie, or as folks know him, Innkeeper Freddie. I don't want to be disrespectful. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Doing well. I can't complain. I got my health.
Yeah.
Family's doing good.
Yeah.
Can't really ask for much else.
All right. You just finished the run, so I'm happy you made it.
Yeah. About this.
About this stuff. Freddie is the first person to come up. Usually, there are some people that come and like go to a workout afterwards, right? But Freddie's like, yeah, I'm right here. We were having a conversation about fitness, so I'm gonna get my fitness on the way. So
Hey.
I love it. So again, I'm not only excited to have a conversation with him, let the community know more about him, his story, but I'm really excited to do that in a way because he is now on the leadership team for PTM as the Events Manager. And we are going to get into what that means quite a bit. So if you're thinking about listening for a few minutes and just checking out, this is not the one to do that for. None of them are. This is not the platform to do that for. You want to be here for everything we're doing, but especially this because we have some really exciting news. So, I've already shared the news. We have some more details about the news. Everybody's like, shit, get the hell on with it. But anyway, to get into the conversation, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you from? Where you at?
Silver Spring, born and raised, just outside Washington, D.C.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So you've seen like everything. You've seen Chocolate City to whatever Mocha. Somebody called it last week Mocha City now. Mocha capital.
I'll tell you, Cappuccino City.
Right.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that growing up in Silver Spring, even though I'm right over the line, after I graduated high school, I moved away to go to college before I came back. And so up until 18, I couldn't really go out to any clubs.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, I didn't spend a lot of my time in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, I come in here every now and again. Actually, I was in a band in high school called Broken Tone.
What kind of band was it?
It was like kind of like the Roots live band. I was on the keyboards.
Nice.
And we used to play at the Powerhouse.
Okay.
Which is a defunct cafe that used to be on U Street, back when U Street was all torn up, when they were still doing the Green Line.
Wow.
But yeah, outside of that, for the most part, Silver Spring was largely where, it went down.
All right. So what was your upbringing like in Silver Spring?
Yeah.
What was it like? What was your upbringing? What was your childhood like? What was your time in middle school, high school like?
I was a nerd.
You was a nerd?
Yeah. In a good way though.
Yeah.
One of the cool nerds.
All right. I mean, I feel like nerds are super cool, so. But go ahead.
Yeah. So no, both the 7th and 8th grade and then in high school, I was in the magnet program.
Oh, right.
Tacoma Park magnet and then Montgomery Blair magnet.
Oh, so you weren't like just I want to be a nerd. Like you were a nerd.
I was a nerd.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah. When I was really young in what do you call it, summer camp.
Yeah.
They had a program where it was like chess and basketball.
Yeah.
And so that's where I learned to play chess.
All right.
And I've always played chess off and on. Not as good as I used to be because you kind of have to keep up your chops. But I used to play chess in high school a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Played a little bit of tennis.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say when I was like early high school, late middle school. And I'm just talking about like the active stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of that. Actually, so fun fact, I used to rollerblade a lot.
You used to rollerblade?
Yeah, like the stuff where you would jump on rails and go down stairs and jump on high walls and stuff like that.
Alright.
Yeah, I did that for a couple years in high school. And,
so all throughout Silver Spring?
Yeah, Silver Spring, like all throughout the DC metro area.
Wow.
So yeah, Canadian Embassy, the 21 stair rail.
Yeah. You ever get hurt?
Yeah. And that was one of the main things why I stopped, because I was like, why am I going to participate in this activity that, like, literally I'm putting myself at bodily risk all the time.
So what was one of the worst injuries that you sustained as a rollerblader?
I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it was the most embarrassing.
What's the most memorable?
Yeah, so I had like not been out skating for a while.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was because of an injury or if it was just because I just hadn't been, because I transitioned from like rollerblading to doing the band. And so I came back out one time back when they used to have a skate park in downtown Silver Spring. It's like literally my first time out, like ready to go. So I jump on the rail, boom, I'm good, but I stand a little too long and like my left foot, I want to say, catches, like the first wheel catches, break my ankle.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so everybody's being funny. It's like, oh, Fred out here thinking that he still got it because he ain't been out here in a minute. First run he does, breaks his ankle. Yeah, it's like, all right, you know what?
Wow.
I'm done.
All right, I get that. Shoot. So thinking about this nerd upbringing, this nerd-like upbringing, which is fine. If there are any nerds watching this,
Blur Gang. Shout out to Blur Gang.
Didn't know that was a thing. But, so was that like not part of your family? That just sounds like a weird way to put it. But was that like an emphasis as far as like schoolwork and just being in that space? Was that like the priority for your family?
Yeah, I mean, scholastics, you know, they wouldn't let me bring home like a C or really like B's.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so part of it also is that, you know, I went to Tacoma with the Blair, which is like right over the line, like 20910 or 20912 zip code.
Right.
But
are these public schools or?
Yeah, public schools with the magnet program inside.
Right.
But I actually grew up a little bit further north. Still in Silver Spring, but I guess area. See, the thing is, it doesn't really have like an actual area. It's like in between Fairland, Cloverly, Spencerville, and Burtonsville, I guess you could say. And even then, the neighborhood that I was living in, my parents still live in that same house, it's kind of isolated. Yeah. So when I would come home, it wouldn't be like I would go out and like have a bunch of friends from school or people that I knew to like hang out with. So when I got home, it was like I was home. Yeah, and so, you know, there was no internet back then. Right.
We that old.
Like for real. You know, we had cable, you know, but
all you could do is schoolwork.
Yeah, I mean, it was like there wasn't enough to preoccupy me with to where it was like, this is keeping you from your homework, you know what I'm saying?
That makes
sense.
Like
you play video games enough and it's like, all right, Fred, do your homework. Well, you know, I've been playing video games for quite some time. So.
Like, you're all right. So you mentioned getting into tennis. What was your entry? Well, what was your intro to tennis?
A family friend of ours named Stan White. Shout out to him. He was a tennis instructor.
All right, where?
I think like just as a regular personal tennis coach, you know, and he took me on and I would just, you know, rally with him and, you know, serve and hit and everything, and that just got like the fundamentals in place.
Right.
And then a little bit I started like doing intramural stuff, but I wasn't really all that great. Yeah. I'd say I was bad, but I wasn't at that level to where you could see like, oh, okay. You know, it's kind of like you start out and it's like the best of the class moves on to the next level, best of the class moves on to the next level. But early on, I was in the middle of the class. And I was like, you know what? Okay. Yeah. I figured out how to play tennis. I'm good.
So do you play tennis now?
No.
Alright.
But I mean, I still have the rackets and stuff, and I can still go out and play.
Yeah.
I probably played ping pong more than I played tennis. Yeah. Nice. Ping pong and pool. I played that a lot after school.
How do you play pool?
When I was in elementary school.
Alright. Do you play pool now?
Not on a regular basis, but I'm pretty decent.
Alright. Me too. We gotta get out sometime.
There it is.
So you mentioned leaving the DMV area to go to college.
Yes.
Where'd you go to school?
Florida A&M.
Oh, you went to
Tallahassee, Florida. High 7 Hills. Shout out to all the Rattlers out there. Sorry, speaking in the mic. I should probably speak to you.
No, you're good. I'm like, hey, roll credits. That's it. So, what made you go to FAMU?
So my father is a professor of music at Howard University.
Okay.
So every summer I used to go with him and shadow him. So I'd seen Howard all the time and I was like, nah, I don't want to go to this school. But at the same token, I wanted to go to an HBCU. So I basically was like...
I may have to edit that part out, by the way.
Why?
Because you said, oh, I don't want to go to Cinematica.
But no, okay, so you gotta understand, like, I've been around it so much. It's kind of like, you know, if I'd been there so much that it was like, I wanted something new. Part of the college experience I wanted was to get away. And this kind of plays into later, like, me and running and stuff. You know, I'm always looking up new routes, trying to go to places and stuff. So part of that was also like I wanted to get away, just kind of learn the geography of somewhere else as well. Yeah. But I wanted to go to a Howard away from home, basically. Yeah. And FAMU was like, hey, come on down. Yeah. Like literally, they flew me down there, and then gave me a tour, and then gave me a full ride, and I was like, okay, let's do this.
This is it.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you go to school for?
I was in the School of Business and Industry, SBI.
SBI.
A 5-year MBA program.
Okay.
So basically you go in, they accelerate the undergrad program from 4 to 3 years, and you have 2 years of grad school. And then you're required to do 3 internships. So that serves as like, you know, they say that when you're doing, if you want to go get your MBA, you should get your BA first or your graduate degree first. Right. Go work somewhere and then come back into grad school. So the idea was these internships would serve as that work experience. Yeah.
Do you feel like it served as the work experience for you?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Because, you know, one of the internships I did was the Pfizer internship, which was 8 months. Because you go through their actual training program that the pharmaceutical sales reps go through for like 3 months. And then you have your 4-month internship afterwards. Which, by the way, fun fact, was during the summer and fall of 2001. Okay. And I was a pharmaceutical sales rep or drug dealer for Brooklyn. But they put you in corporate housing. And the corporate housing I had was 6 blocks away from the World Trade Center. Wow. Yeah. So I was in New York that day. And it's crazy because I tell the story all the time. So basically, you set your schedule based upon when the doctors are in the office, right? So a lot of doctors I saw weren't in the office until like 10 o'clock. So I usually wouldn't leave the house until maybe 9 o'clock. And they also gave you a company car too, which is really good. So I would leave from home, driving, go through the Harlem Tunnel, not the Harlem Tunnel, the Brooklyn Battery Bridge, Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Is that what it is? Or one of the bridges, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. Anyways, it would take a while for me to get there. Yeah. So I'd probably leave around 9 o'clock. The first plane hit at 8:45. So I know that I would have been there, and I was going through a big photography phase in my life. So I know that like I would have been in the middle of it. But God was looking out. Like that morning we had a meeting that took me all the way into Brooklyn. Yeah. Like near Queens. Yeah. Where I had to be there like 7:45. So I was away from everything. So I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No worries. This is the breaking news to all of us, right? But what was your experience like to be there at that time? And how old are you at this time?
I was 21.
So 21, you just finished this accelerated BA program, and now you're in this.
Well, no, this was during one of the internships, so I was still in the middle of school. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like to navigate that space in New York as a young adult?
Well, the internet. I said the internet was around at that time, but people didn't use the internet to solve problems, right? So it wasn't like, you know, I could use the internet to find out about parties and stuff. Yeah. And I really didn't know that many people. And the people that I did know from New York were also in school.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time when I was there, it was during the fall, so these people were already in school themselves. So it wasn't like I had a big network of people.
No, so I guess I'm referring to the time when, as 9/11 happened, you're in New York. What was it like to navigate that space?
Crazy. What was interesting was no one really knew exactly what happened.
Right.
So after it happened, I was like, I gotta get back home and get my camera. So I tried to get home. I tried to get back to the house as fast as possible, but of course all the bridges were closed.
Right.
So, yeah, I know, right? So I was standing on one side of the East River, looking at Lower Manhattan, and you couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
It was like all just dust and rubble.
Yeah.
I hadn't known that one of the buildings had fallen. So there's a nearby fire station.
Right.
Walked in there and was seeing everything going crazy on in there, and they had a TV. And then right then the second building fell, and all those guys were getting into their fire trucks, leaving out.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. But so then I said all that to say I finally gotten this line of cars to try to get out on the Throgs Neck Bridge, but then they shut that down. So everybody got out their cars and was talking, and everybody had all different stories about like what was going on there. Like people were saying, yeah, it was an F-15. It came and it like shot 2 missiles into the plane because no one really knew, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And your cell phones were dead. But I will say, during then, like racism was gone. Like everybody was a New Yorker at that point, you know what I'm saying? Because we all like had a shared experience where it was like, I don't want to say us versus them, but it was a shared experience where we all felt we were attacked. So everybody, at least for that brief period, was kind of on the same team.
Figure out how to come together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thinking about the rest of your day and just getting from the bridge and getting home, because I do want to take some time to not even talk about your experience in New York, but talk about your experience on that day, right? Because that was a really huge day for all of us. And like you said, for a brief time, racism was, I wouldn't say gone for everybody else, right? But I could definitely see how it was kind of removed if you're sitting there in New York. But again, you're sitting there on that bridge. What was it like throughout the rest of the day until you got home?
So
and got your camera.
So I had some extended family out in New York, and I guess you could call it like a aunt of mine.
Yeah.
Lived in Westchester, so I couldn't go back to the apartment that I had in the financial district for a good 2 weeks after September 11th. So that first night, I was on the Throgs Neck because I was trying to head up to her spot in Westchester County.
Yeah.
So when I got to her place, bunch of my extended family from New York was checking in, making sure everybody's okay.
Yeah.
And come to find out, I had a cousin, Stephanie Irby, who worked in the Trade Center, that was in the Trade Center that day.
Wow.
Yeah, and what was crazy was, I want to say not more than a month before then, we had kind of a mini family reunion, if you will. And I met so many people that I'd only heard of or didn't even know were my family. And Stephanie was one of them. And so, like in the rush, it wasn't like I ever had a real in-depth conversation with her. I didn't even know she worked in the Trade Center. I didn't know that until I got to my Aunt Rita's house. Yeah. But that was crazy. And that night sleeping was one of the worst nights sleeping, just because just thinking like, okay, wow, I actually had a relative that was in there, and thinking So there was that, and then
So what did the next 2 weeks look like for you? Because I recognize, you're going to this meeting in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. You're not going and packing a bag for 2 weeks. You're going to go to work and come back home. So
correct.
Not only are you removed from your home, but you're removed from all of your things, right? So,
so
what
we
was
had
it like for
that whole next week we had off.
Oh yeah.
in New York. It was just processing it because we still didn't know. You have to remember, like at that time, nothing like that had ever happened before.
Yeah.
So we didn't know when was the end, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if you remember, there were some Congress people or something that were getting envelopes with what is that chemical? Anthrax. Yeah. And it was like, oh man, like they really coming for us, you know?
Yeah.
So it was just a whole uncertainty that was in the air.
Yeah.
So we had the rest of that week off. And the next week after that, they put me up in the Brooklyn Marriott, and then tried to like have some sort of semblance of getting back to normal.
Yeah.
And then finally, when I moved back into the apartment, they still wouldn't let anybody south of Canal if you didn't live there. So it's funny, you're going from a point where it was like a busy, bustling downtown area to now, I want to say, for pretty much the remainder of the internship, it was just like a ghost town.
Yeah.
After 5 o'clock.
So definitely, again, appreciate you taking some time to just share that experience. I'm curious, were athletics a part of your life at this time?
Not particularly, no.
So at what point did you like implement athletics into your life as now a young adult?
Okay, so I was thinking about this coming here, like where did it really start? I would say...
Where did it all start for you?
Right. When I graduated, I worked in Tampa, Florida for 9 months on a career development rotation again. And while I was there, I want to say it was maybe around Labor Day, for some reason I just challenged myself to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to run to the river and back every day for the remainder of the year. And
that just sounds far. I have no context of where the river back is.
Yeah. So I was living in a neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
So Tampa has two main highways, 275
Yeah.
and I-4. I-4 is the one that goes all the way east to like Daytona, and 275 branches off I-75 and comes down into Tampa. So the area where I-4 and 275 meet is called Tampa Heights. That's where I was living. It's like just outside of downtown. And the Hillsborough River, which by the way, like the Anacostia River is a big rowing river. There are a lot of rowing teams. This is another sidebar. There's a lot of rowing teams.
Freddie has a lot of sidebar, by the way. If you're watching or listening, just get ready for the sidebar.
I just have non sequitur knowledge, like just from living.
Because you're a nerd.
There you go. There's a lot of teams from the East Coast, specifically up north, that go down to Tampa and train on the Hillsborough River in the off season.
So how long was that run for you?
I want to say it was like maybe a mile and some change to the river.
Okay.
And so there and back was maybe 2.5 miles or something like that.
Wow.
And I didn't have a. Did I? I don't even think I had an iPhone at that time. I had one of those 2-ways that flip around.
Yeah.
But I did have a pedometer, so I would just run with the pedometer.
Yeah.
And
gosh, how old are you, man? Just kidding.
Yeah, there it is, right? But no, that's a good segue because that was where I started, right? And mind you, this is just me like sneakers, okay, running, okay. So I had a pair of Reebok Classics. In the morning, I'd wear cotton sweatpants, like Tommy Hilfiger sweatpants, a white cotton T-shirt in Tampa, and just go to the river. Because I would wake up in the morning. I do this before work, so it would still be relatively good temperature. In Tampa, from October to April, it's like perfect weather. Like it's highs in the 70s. You know what I mean? And in the morning, maybe starts at 60. So.
But you said you did this every day for the rest of the year, right?
Every work day.
Every work day.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that. Yeah.
Gosh, you ran through those classics.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did that ankle injury come back?
No, that'd been healed. that was long before. That's funny. No, but so originally I was supposed to go to New York.
Yeah.
It was actually written in my contract at the time. I was supposed to do this career development rotation, figure out where they wanted me in the company, and then I would have a position in that service line in New York. But it didn't work out that way, and they said, hey, Fred, we have a position for you in D.C. I was like, okay, cool. So then when I moved back to D.C., I was like, I'm buying a house. But then this is like 2005, and everything is like the super run-up, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm not about to just give a blank contract to somebody who knows trying to get a house.
Yeah.
So I lived in my parents' house for about 4 years. After I moved back. So that kind of killed the running side of things, right?
Really?
Because I was just out, and my parents just like, it wasn't. There was a sense of independence that came with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I may have continued doing that if I had moved in the city, but when I was just out there, it was just because it's kind of like I said, it's isolated.
So what came into? So I know you didn't get the house at the time.
Yeah.
Curious, what came first? Getting a home, or getting your end, or starting running again?
Getting a home.
All right. So I know that is a big part of your life. You can take a drink as I frame this question. I know the end is a big part of your life, so I do want to take some time to talk about that. If you're listening, just get prepared for a 60-minute episode. So I know that's a big part of your life. Tell us about that. Like, what? And you're an innkeeper.
Yeah.
And you're black.
Yeah.
And you're I don't even know your age. Like, undetermined age.
I'm 40.
I
know, right? But
what's the secret, man?
Mom.
That's real.
My mom has a very youthful look.
Yeah.
And luckily I inherited those genes.
So there you go. So tell us, what was the idea? When did you get the end? What's your experience been like with that?
So, I guess if we're going to go in chronological order, wow, I don't think I've actually told all this in one place. All right, so 2008, bought a house, and then had to fix it up and everything. And of course, it took much longer. So I didn't actually move into that house until 2009. And actually, that house is literally on the same block that I currently live on right now. But anyways, when I moved into that house, finally had a place and everything, and then 2010 was coming, and I was like, dang, I'm about to be 30.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is around the age where, like, my father, who, I don't think he was, like, skinny, but he wasn't, like, as portly as he is now. But this is around the age where it started. I was like, oh man, like, I don't necessarily want to, I want to stay in shape. I want to stay thin.
Yeah, why do you keep looking at me like that? I need to work on my life.
Nah, you're fine. So my thing was, okay, the same 5 days a week thing. I was like, okay, that house was about a 5K. Like, if you ran from the house around the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, and back, it's a 5K. So I was like, I'm going to do that 5 days a week. So, broke out the Reebok Classics, the Tommy Hilfiger sweats.
Not the same classics.
Exactly, yeah. So, but this time I'm running a little bit more. And, I want to say maybe a month in, I realized I went to the store, like one of those regular Foot Locker or something. I'm like, man, look, I got, like, my shin hurts, man.
Yeah,
like this is like I'm running everything, like, oh, you got shin splints. It's like, yeah, that's probably what it is. They're like, okay, so what are you running? And I was like, these? They're like, really? So they're like, no, you need a proper pair of running shoes. It's like, okay, cool. And like, yeah, wait, like, don't tell me you're running in like cotton. It's like, wait, what am I supposed to be running?
I'm running in these sweatpants.
Yeah, it's cold out. They're like, nah, man. So then, first lesson is like, hey, running is still not cheap.
Yeah.
Like, if you want good gear and everything. So, I got, the long pants that, are kind of form-fitting, you know what I mean? I don't know what you call them, but running long pants. A pair of shorts. I was still using my normal socks.
Yeah.
Got a pair of, like, running shoes, Nike running shoes. And, so then I was doing that, and then I started, I was getting better, but didn't realize it because at this time I still didn't have a watch, and I don't think I had an iPhone at the time either. Basically, what I would do is I had an iPod, that's what it was, with a bunch of different running songs, and I would time how I would run around the Capitol based upon how many songs we listened to. Yeah. So it's like if I ran 8 songs, I was like, yeah, you were slow. But if I did 6, I was like, yo, I did that. You know what I'm saying?
I love that. It's like it just takes away, the thinking out of it. It's just like, hey, I'm going to enjoy this, and how many songs can I enjoy? And I don't even know how you transitioned to that story.
I'm telling the story of how I got in running.
But we were talking about the innkeeper.
Yeah, I'm getting
man. Sorry, back to the rabbit hole, y'all.
No worries. So actually, they're kind of 2 separate stories, but to put a
you're messing up my questions. I don't have questions.
I'm sorry. But to put a bow on everything I'm saying, at the time, there was a friend of mine, shout out to Fred Miller.
Another Fred.
Yeah, another Fred. He would host a poker night every Thursday.
Did you run there with your sweats and?
No. I don't think I ever ran there. But so then starting the poker night, and then I somehow came up with a conversation. I was like, yeah, I run around the Capitol every day. He's like, oh really? He's like, yo, you should run a marathon. I was like, man, get the out of here. Like,
I don't have enough songs.
That's like really funny. Okay, so I was like, man, nah, like I'd never been. He's like, no, it's easy, you can start training like right now. In fact, you're already ahead of the game because you started running at the beginning of the year. And he's like, you can run with the Capitol Running Club. They meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, but really all you gotta do is the distance runs they do on Saturdays. Yeah. And I was like, whatever, man. So then he was the guy that would actually come to my house, pick me up at like before 6 o'clock in the morning, ride me out there, and then we would go, and he would just leave me, and I'm just one of the slowest guys in the back. But then gradually, started picking up my pace, and pretty soon it was like, yo, okay, cool.
So listening to less and less songs.
Less and less songs, yeah. Well, even during those runs, I wouldn't even listen to songs. Actually, what the Capitol Running Club was interesting was it was like a place where people would actually network. Yeah. So Miller at the time was a lobbyist, so it kind of makes sense that he would be there to because it was really interesting because you would have like at least an hour to talk with somebody with no distractions. And you don't even need to talk about policy or anything like that. You're just getting to know the person. Yeah. And that's how you develop relationships.
I mean, that's how people if I can talk. That's how people develop relationships and playing golf and other things, right? So I would say, hey, I love being on a bike. Where else can you spend 2-3+ hours with somebody? And seeing how they navigate through things, seeing how they handle challenges. If they, get a flat tire, how do you manage that? And how do you communicate with other people and support other people? So that's why I love athletics, and that's why we try to tell stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of life lessons in that, like for real.
Yeah. So you're training for your first marathon. Yeah. You were at some point we're going to get back to the end, but
it's real simple. So this is actually why I wore the shirt, because this is from when I ran the Marine Corps, 2010, and I actually ran it like just a little over 4 hours. And my first marathon, I never did any of the running stuff or anything like that. And it was like, yo, okay. And at the time I didn't know that 4 hours was actually good. People were like, oh wow, that's like amazing. I said, okay, cool. And then I proceeded in 2011 to like just fall off, and really didn't run that much anymore. Yeah. So to the end. So I always felt that hopefully I'll have a family with children. Yeah. And I wanted my children to at least have one parent who was self-employed, so they can see hey, there's a W-2 route, there's a 1099 route, So you can be exposed to it at a young age, so you can just internalize that and understand. It broadens your scope of the world and how to look at things, right? Right. And I always thought that a good family business would be a bed and breakfast or an inn, right? Because you feel that the kids, and growing up in that, would have all life skills. They know how to keep a clean home, spread a bed, mop, cook. They would understand marketing skills about how to promote the inn. They would have good interpersonal skills because they meet all sorts of people from all around the world.
Right.
They'd have good financial management skills because it would be accounting, you know. And all that.
Right.
And at the very least, you know, they'd probably have a bomb college essay that they could write about some experience that they had that's just some random stuff that, you know, hopefully will catch somebody's eye at whatever institution you want to go to.
Yeah.
So that was my whole thing. And so I had been a commercial real estate appraiser for good 8 years by 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I wanted to transition into something different. I didn't know exactly which direction I wanted to go, but I wanted to transition out of just being a commercial real estate appraiser. And so I applied to a couple of schools, and I got into both of them, and I chose Columbia, which is their Master of Science in Real Estate Development program.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1 year intensive program, like it's literally from June to June, you come out with your master's. And that was a good transition to kind of expose me to, you know, the private equity side of, you know, real estate, the actual being a developer side of real estate. If you want to be one of those institutional guys working for a big firm or something like that. But when I came out, actually while I was in there, a house next door to the one that I had came up for purchase and in foreclosure, and I ended up bidding on it and winning it.
Mm-hmm.
And I incorporated that into like this, I guess you could call it a independent research course about like putting together a bed and breakfast across multiple properties. So when I came out, it was like, okay, I ended up selling the first house that I bought to use that money to buy the house next door to the one that I currently owned, and then fixed that one up, and then fixed up my house a little bit, and Union Inn was born.
All right. What year was this?
This is, let's see. The whole renovation stuff happened 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could say both were formally put into operation in 2017.
Yeah. So I know we're going to get back to your story of reintroducing running back into your life, since there was this gap after finishing that first marathon. But since we are on the topic of the end, I'm curious, when did the your podcast?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that even before around the time that I was renovating, I started doing short-term rentals while I was at Columbia, because I knew that I'd be coming back from New York down to DC. And so rather than just renting it out traditionally on an annual basis, I could set the times like, okay, I'm going to be here, I'll be back here, and just rent it out separately then.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of that year, it worked out really well financially. So I was like, hey, let's just keep it going. And so when I came back, that's when I really got to meet and speak with the guests, because I was on site.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversations I would have with these people would just be crazy. I'm like, this needs to be a podcast.
Yeah.
Because I had been listening to podcasts for quite some time before then, and was just like, yo, I would love to do a podcast. But at the time, like we're talking 2014, 2015, the tools for doing a podcast just weren't out there.
Yeah.
In fact, like, I started the podcast in 2018, but even then, when I would ask people, hey, I'm doing a podcast, they're like, what is a podcast? Like, people still didn't know what it was. But my main thing was like, hey, this should be a podcast. I know that I would find this conversation interesting.
Yeah. It's the most important thing, right?
Exactly. So once I had like a full year under my belt of like 2017 of running both of them, it was like, okay, now I'm going to try this podcast thing.
Okay.
And figure out how to work that whole thing out.
All right.
And so I proceeded to
try
to put it together, made some mistakes, but you know.
Hey, shoot, I definitely know. we make mistakes, and we will continue to make mistakes. If you're listening and watching this, and you're like, oh man, I'm so glad that they're not making mistakes. We're sadly mistaken. We will continue to, and we will embrace them, and we look forward to making more.
But it's crazy. It's like, because it's, you know, as much as we try to avoid making mistakes, it's in the mistakes that you really learn.
Right.
Not just like what not to do, but also you just, in trying to find a solution for the mistake that you made, you end up learning that whole area of something that you probably didn't know that you needed to know. And so now that you know this whole area going forward, if anything else you need to do inside that area, that may not necessarily pertain to the mistake that you made, but just generally around that. Like say microphones or something, right? So
right.
you find out the difference between directional versus a condenser.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
I mean, and thank you for your help. You just said some things, and I have no idea what you just said. I have innkeeper Freddie, and I got Mason G. It's like, hey, they talked to Danny, and they said, and Danny said, what should we get? And they said, get these. We ordered them. That was it. At some point, we're going to learn what that is. But thinking about those mistakes and those lessons learned before
You'll have this time, so
appreciate it. Before we transition to running, I am curious because we always talk about what lessons are we learning, right? When we think about that mental health piece, as an innkeeper, and still a young adult at this time, right? And you still are a young adult, but even younger adult at this time.
I'm not young, but I'm not old yet.
All right. What were some lessons that you learned at that time, starting your business?
Oof. Man.
What was one lesson? Because I gotta narrow it down for Freddie.
Yeah. Right. Knowing, I guess, when to pick your battles on things.
Getting back to the running part, again, I appreciate you taking time to talk about your experience there. And I recognize that although we are athletes and we talk about our athletics, we are much more than athletes, right? And we come and we have a full story. So definitely want to make sure we spend some time talking about that story and talking about who you are in that space.
Definitely.
But getting back to athletics, how did you transition running back into your life? In particular, how did you integrate the running community, which I know is such a big part of you as an athlete today?
I don't know if it was anything really in particular. I want to say the end of 2018, 2019 is where I really started picking up on running again.
Oh, so it's really recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'd always been running off and on.
Yeah.
Since I did the Marine Corps in 2010, me and Fred Miller, we have a thing where we run a marathon every 5 years.
Yeah. 1 second. Sorry to deviate. Did you run a marathon in your Reebok Classics?
No,
sweatpants?
I did not.
All right, cool.
So,
2018, 2019. You're
hey, I'm saying that to show you like humble beginnings of where I started, because I didn't know anything, man. I figured sneakers are sneakers, you know.
Yeah, that's real. We had a conversation in the group chat about bikes, so
yeah.
But go ahead. 2018, 2019, you're reintroducing running back into your life.
Yeah, so we have a thing where we run a marathon every 5 years, and so like when 2015 was coming up, it was like 2014 I kind of slipped and I just wasn't like really on it, and so we had a horrible time running the 2015 marathon, but we did it though, right?
Which one?
When we ran the Marine Corps in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So knowing that 2020 was coming up, it's like, okay, you know what? Let me really try to get into it.
Makes sense.
So that was like the end of 2018. I mean, I'd always been running like off and on.
Yeah.
But like really 2018 was towards the end of 2018 was where I really started like running on a more consistent basis. And
so at 2018, 2019, who are you running with at that time?
So mostly myself. I still didn't have a watch yet.
Still with that iPod.
No, actually, what I would do is, I don't think I would run with music, honestly, at that time. What I would do is, I had my iPhone, and what I would do is, before I leave the house, I would start the watch, the stopwatch thing, app on it, and then leave, and then go run. Because I would just run around the cabin and back, and then come back, and then hit it when I came back in the house, and that would be like my time.
And you did this in 2018/2019.
Correct. Because you have to also remember that I reluctantly got on Facebook when I was at Columbia.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I hadn't checked it at all.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't get an Instagram account until 2019. So I have no idea what's going on with social media. So it wasn't like I was using Strava or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a watch or anything like that. So it was literally like my sort of bootstrap, if you will, just running, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I started running more and more, and then I run with DRC, District Running Collective, shout out to them, a few times before.
Yeah.
And so I started running with them pretty much on a fairly frequent basis when they would do their Wednesday runs or their Saturday runs.
Okay.
Occasionally I do the Capitol Running Club, but they would meet like super early in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a morning person. And their Saturday runs were longer runs, and I was just getting back into it, so I wasn't about to do like 8 to 10 miles or anything like that. So, but I would run with them every now and again.
Okay. So I'm making jokes in the conversation, but I do want to take a moment to just say how just be serious for a moment, because it is as simple as, getting the sweatpants and Reebok Classics or whatever it is that you have, right, and just getting started. So when we think about people getting introduced to athletics, they're like, oh, I have to have everything. I think about me when I got my first bike. I had a Walmart bike, right? I don't have a Walmart bike now, but I got what I needed to make sure it was something that I wanted to invest in later. Yeah. Right? Or Freddie, again, the things that he had, I'm not going to keep saying it because I laugh every time, but it's just that simple. So all that to say, if you're listening to this, watching this, and you're like, how do I get started? You already got started by thinking about it. So just go out and get it done, right? And just get moving. But getting back to your conversation, so you did the marathon in 2015, and then now you did so you and Fred are planning to do a marathon every 5 years.
2020.
So tell us about that. I know about it, but I don't know about it.
No, it's all good. So we had done the Marine Corps twice before, and we kind of wanted to switch it up. And I proposed the idea about doing like an international marathon.
Yeah.
But in the 5 years between 2015 and 2020, Miller had not one, not two, but 3 children. So.
Oh, he had a busy 5 years.
Yeah, he did. So, traveling internationally by plane, like overseas, may not be the easiest thing.
Right.
So we kind of split difference and still did international, but we plan to do Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah. So, trained all through 2019, and then really got into the training regimen for planning to run that marathon because it was a spring marathon. It was like May 3rd of 2020 was when it was scheduled. So we really started ratcheting up in the beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Right.
And they canceled it. And so.
So what did you do?
So part of me was just like, well, now what, So then, I guess part frustration with, training all the time and not wanting to go to waste. I was like, nah, man, like, hold on. So this goes back to me liking to find routes and everything like that, right? And I was playing around on Strava on the routes thing one day, and I was like, found this map from 1791 of DC, of the old federal city border, and I was like, well, what if somebody were to run the boundaries of all 4 quadrants? And it came out to like 24 miles. Yeah. And I was like, wait, hold on. What if I extend this out to Freddie Douglas' house over in Anacostia, gotta include east of the river. And it came out to 26.5 miles. And I was like, oh man, you know what? So I called Miller, I was like, got an idea. We still gonna run this marathon, dude. We don't need medals or anything like that. We still gonna run this. And we're gonna call it the Juneteenth Marathon. So kind of push it back.
But it's not a marathon if it's 26. if it's more than 26.2.
That's where you're wrong. Because the Juneteenth Marathon adds an additional 0.01 miles for every month between Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth. So it's 30 months between, January 1, 1863 and June 19th, 1865.
Wow.
So, 26.5 miles.
So can you explain, like, what does that period mean for those 30 months?
Okay, I'm sorry. So, the Emancipation Proclamation was announced by Abraham Lincoln in 1863 in the middle of the Civil War. Basically, no more slaves, right? But of course, the South didn't adhere to that because they were still in the middle of the Civil War, right? So, you had slaves that were still in the South who, by, what's the word I'm looking for? Statute, if you will, by being in America, were free, but by being in the South, they weren't. And the Civil War was over, and the slaves, there was no internet, there wasn't really, it wasn't widely publicized throughout the South that the slaves were no more. And there's all sorts of stories about that too, right? But anyways, so in 1865 in Galveston, Texas, June 19th, 1865 in Galveston, Texas, Gordon Granger arrived and made the announcement that the slaves were no longer slaves, and the relationship between master and slave is now that between employer and employee. And so all the slaves like, what? Oh man, there was a big celebration at the time. And that marked the Juneteenth holiday.
So Juneteenth Marathon,
26.5 miles.
26.5 miles. Tell us about the experience on that day. And I do know, before you get into that, you had an episode, and we'll make sure we'll put that in the show notes, where Freddie, he explains it in detail. Definitely want to make sure you all navigate to that to hear that story in full detail. But if you're interested, here it is for a little bit of that piece. Take it away, Freddie.
Yeah, I guess the cliff notes of it. So there's two pieces, right? So there's the actual run side of it, where while we were training, I'm gonna give a shout out to David Lai. He's the man. He does a lot of great social justice work all around DC and Baltimore, and he's blazing fast. So I think we'd run with him one time with Riot Squad, shouts to him, out in Baltimore, and I told him that the following week that I was going to be running 18 miles to train for the Juneteenth Marathon. He's like, Juneteenth Marathon? I haven't heard of that. I was like, yeah, we're just doing it, man. Like, we've been training, and we're going to run 26.5 miles, and that's just what it is. So we're going to run 18 miles. Okay, cool. He's like, okay, no doubt. I may join you on that. I was like, what, for Columbia to run, 18 miles? He's like, yeah, that and possibly the Juneteenth Marathon. I was like, oh, really? Okay, cool, right? So he thought about it, and when he came back the next week, he was like, yeah, I definitely want to do it, and I may not be the only one. I was like, really? Yeah. And so then it kind of just spread, like, through, these informal running networks of just people who I know, that Dave knew, that friends of friends knew, and it just blossomed into this kind of unsanctioned running event to celebrate the Juneteenth holiday, as well as, run the boundaries of all four quadrants. And the day that we ran, it was just, the weather was just so great, man. Yeah. It was beautiful. So the route, more specifically, if you're familiar with DC, we start at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and then run east down the mall, and then run all around the boundaries of all four quadrants, go over the Frederick Douglass Bridge, and then end at Frederick Douglass House. And so then afterwards, we had a little impromptu guest barbecue, if you will, over at the 14th Street Market Park. It's like a linear park between U and V Street on 14th Street Southeast. Yeah. And we had bike sweepers, we had people manning water stops, we had crowd as well. I think we had maybe 12 or 13 people on that, and then another 20 or so people that helped out with everything. And it was just like a community event, that informal running community event that while I was the person that was kind of the person that kind of put it out there together, like there's no way that I could have done this without the input and help and assistance from everybody in the DC and Baltimore running communities. And that's what really made it so beautiful. And then, so that's the running side of it.
Yeah.
Then there's the actual Juneteenth part in terms of like the significance of what it meant. And you have to remember at this time, I think George Floyd had happened, I want to say maybe 2 weeks prior to the actual race.
Right.
Ahmaud Arbery had happened on, what was that, May 23rd?
Right.
Or no, I'm sorry, February 23rd was when it happened, because he ran 2.23 miles. And that Breonna Taylor had happened at the time as well. And so this is like right in the middle of all the protests that were happening in DC. And just as much about the protests, what it started was the idea of people needing to have real conversations that they might be uncomfortable with, to really kind of recenter how we look at race in America and police brutality, or just the idea that for those who aren't a minority in America, being silent is almost kind of like complicity at this point. And to me, that really kind of tied in with Juneteenth,
Right.
because it's like a liberation of the mind, if you will, where it was like you were living in one way before, and then you were free. Now, what are you going to do? So, if we think about it in current terms, pre-COVID, pre-Black Lives Matter 2020, it's like it was okay to be quiet. If you have a racist friend who says something, you have a racist relative who says something, you know what, I'm just going to be quiet because, I don't want to rock the boat or anything like that. Or if you're a black person, hey, I want to be quiet. I don't necessarily want to bring up the fact that, police are shooting black people out here. You know what I'm saying? That's not cool. I want to be reserved about whether or not I bring that up in any situation, just because I don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
But following the protest, following, the Juneteenth holiday, following just COVID, where people at that time for like the last 3 months had just been kind of sedentary and staying put, and really had a time to like sit and reflect outside of the, rat race that they had, of the prior decade, if you will. It's kind of a liberation that happened of the way in which we look at race relations, police brutality, just people that are oppressed in America. And what are we going to do moving forward? So to me, that's what the race represented, if you will.
Yeah, I appreciate you breaking it down. I'm curious, so you mentioned all these things that, excuse me, how this, not even sure if I want to call it a movement, but the movement around Black Lives are having such a huge impact on our world, right, today. And you express how that's showing up in your athletic life. Curious, how is it showing up in some of your other spaces, whether it be personal, professional spaces? Excuse me.
I know I don't bite my tongue as much anymore.
Yeah.
I know that when I have guests, I know that, not to say I would I'd be silent on these issues, but I wouldn't necessarily advance talking about those necessary issues, just because I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. not saying welcome to DC, Black Lives Matter. What are you doing? Have you contributed to the cause? Nah, I'm not that. But if it does come in conversation, I'm definitely not holding back.
Yeah.
And even more so, if I have guests whose background is dissimilar from mine, I'm that much more inclined to try to bring them on a Guestbook Podcast to really have that conversation. Not just for me, but for, I believe, them as well, because there's a good chance that they may literally have not interacted with a black man before,
right?
In a way outside of work or outside of the television,
right?
Like honestly,
yeah.
And so, if I can have that conversation, if I can have a conversation with them to break through just a piece of that.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm changing anybody's mind on anything, but I'm giving them a data point that hopefully, if they have a line of thinking that runs contrary to that data point, they got to explain away that data point, if that makes any sense.
Right. I love it. Yeah, it does. So seeing that, you had this experience and being there, it definitely seemed like a successful day, right?
Yeah.
But for you to now see it all come together, what did it feel like to pull out this successful?
I cried. Tears of joy. Literally, just because, this was something that was literally spur of the moment some 2 months before the run, Right. And for everything to come together the way that it did, and for it to mean something more than just Miller and I running our every 5-year run,
right.
But like I said, the weather being perfect, everyone coming together and helping out, from the water stops to the bike sweepers to the barbecue that we had to the people who the night before we went out and got chalk and like cones and stuff, and there are people that just marked out the routes for us, saying like Juneteenth Marathon this way, to just mark where people should run to meeting a whole bunch of people who I'd only maybe heard about, but just to show support. They didn't run or anything like that. Just to show support came out. It just meant so much.
Appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, what did it mean, or what did it feel like to know that you've created the space as a race director? Because as you mentioned, as David mentioned, as you guys had the conversation, this wasn't something that was created. So It wasn't a Juneteenth Marathon. I know you and I, we've had the conversation, but you're unofficially a race director now. You've created your own space.
It's crazy.
So what did it feel like to just experience that?
It's crazy that you say that, because in the grand scheme of it, I guess you could say I was a race director for that, but at the time, definitely, and even now to a certain extent, I'm not even sure if I internalized that for myself, just because it was such a community effort, of it being together, of it coming together. But it speaks to a lot about the fact that there are very, very, very few races that have, I guess you could say, a social justice component to it. They're out there, and it shows that, hey, look, the field for doing something like this, to actually encourage people to go out and run and be a part of a race and accomplish a goal. Like, you can easily add on an initiative.
Right.
That's not just an initiative in name, but actually an initiative in actually, doing something in the space that's there.
So I'm curious to hear some examples of some of those like races, events, people that I think about. You know, we got Crit over in California. He has his 25 Miles for Justice. We also have Nicole, who's also in California. She's doing the run for Breonna Taylor. Obviously, Run for All Women. They always are doing phenomenal work. But curious, do you have some other examples of people that are doing the work well?
I believe down in Atlanta, where people do the race, I believe they fit into that group, as well as a District Running Collective, who just did the District 19. It's a 19 miler and 19K, and each mile of the 19 miler highlighted someone who had died due to police brutality.
Right.
So while you're running, it's like you're being reminded, like, hey, you know, you have ancestors.
Yeah. And if people are curious about what he's talking about with that, just go to the last episode, check out Taser Tay's episode. He talks about the District 19 and also hit up District Running Collective on Instagram. They actually just released a really powerful video highlighting that event just a few days ago. It was actually today, but we're recording this. So based on when you listen to this, they released it on October 22nd. So make sure you check that out. But wrapping that part of the conversation up, getting back to how we started this conversation, you're now here bringing these amazing events to the PTM space while continuing to, you know, do your own thing, because I know you were planning to start a nonprofit for the Juneteenth Marathon.
Yeah. So
Don't know if that was public. It's kind of public now. If it's not, we can edit it
it's
out.
it's all good. We're putting together a nonprofit for Juneteenth Marathon.
Yeah.
Looking to hold the race next year.
Yeah. Right.
Hopefully, I'm assuming still be largely unsanctioned race, meaning we're not closing any roads or anything like that. It'll still be the people's marathon. The people's marathon for the people. But yeah.
And now bringing events like this to the PTM community. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to do, and what you have in mind, plan?
I mean, as far as you know, and if you don't know, we have a Halloween hike and bike that's happening out in Shenandoah. I mean, this isn't necessarily in the social justice piece. It's more so a leisurely hike and or bike, if you will. 50 miles or 50K. The first 25 or 25K of Skyline Drive out in Front Royal, Virginia, Shenandoah. Asking people to wear a costume. And then it's kind of like a dealer's choice for hiking for that area around there. We're meeting Halloween morning and riding out there. Driving out there.
Yeah.
It's not a picture with a group. Do the ride. We have, turnaround point at the 25K and at the 25 mile point. And then afterwards, meet up again and hopefully have a little kickback where we either go out somewhere to grab a bite to eat, socially distance, of course, or maybe even have a little outdoor type thing if the weather is permitting.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We're going to be meeting Halloween Day, Saturday, October 31st, prior to 6 a.m. I think we leave at 6 a.m. at Urban Athletic Club in Northwest DC. Check out the show notes, hit the link to sign up. We are asking for suggested donations of $10. If you do not have that is not a barrier. Please don't make that a barrier. We still want you to come out. You just can't eat. No, I'm just kidding. We still want you to come out and we'll figure it out. The most important thing is bringing the community together to do something exciting in the fall. And we will be socially distant. Masks are required. You have to have a Halloween costume. If nothing else, you can put a mask on. So let's just have some fun. But with all this and planning these events and thinking about Freddie, the innkeeper, Freddie, the athlete, but again, recognizing that we are this athletic space, I'm curious for you, what has athletics taught you about yourself?
That I have stronger willpower than I give myself credit for. And not even on like the long distance runs. I'm talking about runs where it's like, say I'm running 5 miles or something like that, and 3 miles in I gotta go to the bathroom. You know, and it's like you just want to, it's like, you know what, especially as a guy, you know, you just like, okay, I'm gonna go over here, and just, you know, piss real quick. It's like, nah, I'm gonna hold this till I get home.
Yeah. And
then it's like the whole process of how for 2 miles you try to either distract yourself or just like, nah, I'm not peeing.
Yeah.
Right. That little type of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's in running. But I mean, even beyond that, just the mental benefits of running, not just the willpower side, but also just whatever chemical reactions that happen that allow for like when you get back home, I always find that I'm in a better mental space than when I stepped out the door, or from when I started, if I'm not at home.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like my own little
therapy.
Yeah, a little pick me up.
Yeah. Love that. So we are about to get into some rapid fire questions, but before we get into that, question that I'm sure you know, probably knew that this is coming, and you actually have it on the website, so you folks can go read what he wrote as far as how he defines the perfect athlete. But I'm curious now, how do you define the perfect athlete?
Oh man, this is gonna be bad because I can't even remember what I said before. So I hope I don't say something different.
I hope you do.
How do I define the perfect athlete? The perfect athlete is someone who seeks to leave whatever space that they are active in a better place than when they arrived. So if it's a matter of, you know, however you define that, so it might be like winning championships or something like that. If it's a matter of, you know, making sure there's camaraderie within the group of people that you're running with. If it's a matter of bringing more people into the fold. That to me, it's like thinking beyond just your individual self or accomplishments, but more so being inclusive and what's the word I'm looking for? Not just inclusive, but also welcoming,
engaging, and how do you bring people together?
Embracing.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so lighten the mood, I do have some rapid fire questions. It'll just be a few, because I know we are well over. And again, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you sharing. But curious, so thinking about these long runs that you've done, what are some things that you like to eat before a long run? What's your favorite thing to eat?
To eat before a long run? Maybe oatmeal, I guess. I don't know.
I
think about what I eat afterwards.
That was the next question. So what do you like to eat afterwards?
Oh shoot. Like something decadent.
Alright.
Like, so it's like, to me, it's like if I'm going on a long run that's longer than like a half marathon, I'm going somewhere afterwards to treat myself.
Yeah.
So that way when I'm running, it's kind of like my motivation, you know, just a little thing, because I have a tendency sometimes to be a bit of a foodie. So wherever I'm at, running that long distance, I'll try to find a good quality restaurant around there, you know. So like if I'm around Baltimore, I'll probably try to find a seafood spot.
Yeah.
You know? Just the other day, I went to a nice sushi restaurant.
Yeah. I love it. So, what is your ugliest finish
Like,
for a race?
yeah, it's probably the 2015 marathon.
Also, that rollerblading experience.
Yeah, right. No, it was just ugly because it was just like you finished and I was just like, oh, it's done. And it wasn't like a sense of, oh, I did it. It was like, thank you, it's finally over. And it was like kind of wet that day, and I hadn't trained, and so I was chafing all over. And yeah, I know, right? And the other thing was like, I think outside of like Miller's wife, who was, like, hey, Miller, you did it, yay. Like for me, it was like, there was no one else there. So I was like, done. And it was like, here are your bananas. here's your medal. And I was like, went through all this just to, like, I'd still do it all over again, for the sake of, upholding the tradition and like the memories.
Yeah.
But like afterwards, it was just like, all right, cool. Now I gotta walk all the way to Roslyn Metro just to take the Metro back home.
Right.
And
just
take a shower, and there it is.
It's
like, hey, Mom, Dad, I finished the marathon. Oh, you did? Oh, congratulations.
So, thinking about the finish, what's your favorite race medal? Design.
Juneteenth Marathon shirt.
For the people.
For the people.
All right.
Straight up.
So, although I know you're transitioning into this multi-sport life, if you had to kiss one, kill one, marry one, swim, bike, run, what would it be?
I'm killing swimming. Wait, what is it? Kill what?
Marry.
I'll kiss biking. I'm marrying running.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now. Cause I'm a runner, so yeah. Like till death do us part. Like I can deal with all of the ups and downs of running because I understand it.
Yeah.
Biking I don't know, so I kiss it. And swimming I ain't getting in the water. I mean, I know how to swim, but it's just like when people say like Ironman, like literally like stand on any river, look to the other side and be like, yeah, I need you to swim to that side and then come back.
Why?
Dude. Like what? Especially with like Ironman, it's like, it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm probably gonna do an Ironman at some point in my life now that I'm saying all this stuff. Yeah. But just to me, it's kinda like, dude, then get on a bike and do more than a century. Then get off that bike and then run a marathon. Like that's some next level stuff.
All in the same day.
All on the same day. Yeah.
All right.
Because when I'm swimming, I can never like swim straight for some reason. I'm always going that way, and then like chlorine in your eyes and stuff. Even with goggles, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, I know how to swim. I just never took to it.
All good.
I'm a Pisces, which is great.
So for the folks that may have missed it, can you remind folks of the next event?
Oh, PTM, Shenandoah Hike and Bike. 50K, 50 miler.
Our hike. And just again, come out, sign up, it's free. Or just stay tuned and sign up for our newsletter if you can't make this. We always have things going on. If you want to engage with the community, whether you're here in the DMV area or you're anywhere else, hit us up. We can add you to our group chat. We're not a club, but we do want to create a community. We had a really good conversation the other day about bike fitting. Nonetheless, getting the sign to wrap it up. Again, appreciate you all being patient and just sticking with us through this conversation. It was a really important. We had a lot to unravel, especially around the 9/11 piece. That definitely took us for a little spin. So it's appreciative of you sharing that.
Oh, of course.
Nonetheless, if folks want to continue to connect with you, how can they do that?
UnionNDC.com. That's the website. Feel free to go there. Book. You want to stay with the boy, The pictures are lovely, and the place, when you come and see it, is even better than the pictures.
All right. And then you can be a guest on the podcast.
Yes, correct. And the podcast is called Guestbook Podcast. It's on all major podcast platforms.
Yeah.
at Guestbook Pod on Instagram if you want to see past Guestbook cards of guests that we have. I think SoundCloud.com/Guestbook Podcast. We're gonna transition to the actual GuestbookPodcast.com because I've registered it. It's just something that's on the docket. Do that online. And if you want to see some of my runs, follow me on Strava. Innkeeper Freddie.
All right, there you go. Again, appreciate y'all. Appreciate you sharing the story. And just look forward to continue to build this thing with y'all. All right, peace, y'all.